Our final speaker is Mr. Robert Bailey, the Regional Outreach Officer for the Department of Immigration and Citizenship. Please welcome Mr. Bailey.
Thanks, John, and thanks to the Department of Commerce for providing the opportunity to come out and speak to you. I'm going to talk about skilled migration. Get this thing rolling. It's great to have all of this sort of funding and access to government programs and bits and pieces, but if you don't have the skill sets and are unable to get them, then our department is able to help, hopefully. But just to put it into some kind of perspective, that's a chart of skilled migration being the light blue band as opposed to the family stream. So back in the early 80s, the skilled migration component of our total migration programs was just over 10%. Now it represents just under 70% of the total program, and has continued to climb since the mid-90s. Who can you employ? You can obviously employ Australian citizens. You can also employ permanent residents. This is without any kind of issues, and I'll deal with other issues as we go along in this presentation. But those permanent residents must hold a visa that allows them to work. You can also employ temporary residents. These can be people who have visas of various kinds, but the visas must reflect work rights. Eligible secondary applicants of 457 visa holders, no problem there at all. They're not bound by the same kinds of strictures as the primary 457 visa holder. There are some bridging visa holders who may also be eligible to work, but in order to deal with this, and I will get into that in a second, we've got a program called Vivo, which allows you to check the availability of, or whether or not a person is indeed able to work lawfully in Australia. You're probably familiar with the working holiday maker visas. We've got a lot of people, particularly from the UK, out here at the moment. They're able to work for an employer for up to 6 months. You will also find that some of them have another part of the program available to them if they go out into a region in their first 12 months in Australia, work in agriculture, mining or construction for 3 months. They can apply for a second 12-month stay and can go back and work for one of the employers that they may have worked for in the first 12 months of their visa. They can go back in their second 12 months and work for them for a further 6 months. Vivo. On our website, www.imi.gov.au, so if you want to access any of this information, I don't have brochures because we keep going through changes, and so does our website. It's imperative that if somebody comes to you and you wish to employ them and you've determined that they're not a permanent resident or a citizen, that you check to work out whether or not they have work rights. You go onto our website, you register to become a user of this visa entitlement verification online system. When you register, you'll get a password. You can go in, and if somebody comes to seek work with you, you ask them for permission to search our website. If they don't give you permission, don't hire them. You're just safer that way. If they do give you permission, you can put in details, either their personal details or hopefully their passport number. It will come back with a report showing you whether or not that person is able to be employed. If you employ them and they're not lawfully able to be employed, you could be the subject of sanctions and fines, and now they construct anything from an infringement notice through to civil or criminal penalties. And they've just been recently reinforced through the Employer Sanctions Act, just March that happened. looking at the range of options or the way that the skilled migration program works, the one at the bottom there, that skilled independent, is for people who try and sponsor themselves in, or with the assistance of a state migration authority, come into Australia on a points-based system. But the ones you're most likely to come across are the 457. That runs from 1 day to 4 years in its entirety. If you're an employer and you found somebody who's skilled in that area, you may wish to sponsor them through one of the other programs for permanent residents. Labour agreements are an option there for an employer to employ somebody whose skill is not on a list. Now, we have comprehensive lists that have now been consolidated that basically denote which occupations are able to be sponsored into Australia. If it's not on the list, there may be a chance that you can negotiate to bring somebody in under a labour agreement. That's a direct negotiation between yourself as an employer and the Commonwealth Government. The two permanent skilled programs are the RSMS, the Regional Sponsored, and the Employer Nomination Scheme. The regional sponsored one is open to employers across Australia. Back in 2010, Perth actually became a region for this purpose. It was actually it's a double-edged sword because for a while there, it was an advantage for regional employers that they had over the employers in the city and the metropolitan area. It's been a little undermined by this, but the state government pushed for many years for Perth to become a region. So under the 457, it's a temporary visa, it's demand driven, i.e. there's no cap. There could be any number of people come into Australia on that 457 visa. It definitely responds to the labour market. There are, as I mentioned earlier, the occupations must appear on our consolidated occupation list that I showed earlier. It does have responsibilities incumbent upon an employer. And it certainly wasn't designed for low-paid work. There is a salary. There's a minimum salary threshold of, at the moment, $51,400. That's indexed, goes up every year. However, you can't employ somebody on that. It's for occupations where the market's level salary is above that threshold. And it's incumbent on you as an employer to come back to the department and show that, okay, this particular occupation in my region maybe gets, for an Australian worker, gets $60,000. That's what we're going to be looking at as the benchmark for you to employ under. So if you come to us and say, oh look, I need somebody, and generally this occupation is paid $50,000, it's on the list, and in my region they're paid $50,000, it won't cut it with the department. Now, we had some reforms on the 1st of July last year, and basically we collapsed some of the visas. We used to have onshore and offshore differentiations for regional sponsored, the RSMS, and for the ENS programs. They've all been collapsed. There are now two visa subclasses, one for RSMS, whether you're offshore or onshore, and one for ENS, once again, whether you're onshore or offshore. They've streamlined the pathway for employers wishing to continue to sponsor somebody for permanent residence if they've held them on a 457 visa for 2 years. We've actually raised the age limit. It used to be 45, now it's up to 50. You could get people over the age of 45, but it was subject to exceptional circumstance provisions and was a little bit subjective. That we've now objectified the criteria for that. They also lifted the English requirements, so anybody coming in under the RSMS or ENS programs now has to get 6 in each of the English substreams, the 4 substreams of the IELTS tests. We took away the requirement under RSMS for regional certification of the job for people transitioning from the 457 into RSMS. And we introduced one consolidated list. Up until that time, we had a list for 457s, we had a list for ENS, we had a list for people that were wishing to sponsor themselves in. And particularly for people under 457s, there was a disconnect. Some came in expecting to be able to be sponsored into Australia. The occupation was not on the list that allowed them to be sponsored in. So under this permanent program, there are 3 streams. The temporary transition stream is for 457 visa holders who've been working in that occupation for the same employer for the previous 2 years, and we can move those applications through very quickly. The direct entry stream is for employers wishing to sponsor somebody in either directly from overseas or somebody who's maybe been working for another employer. The agreement stream that you see there is for the labour agreement side of things. Under the temporary transition, I'm not going to read this to you. It is available on that little thumb drive that's outside, and I would encourage you to take it home. Basically, this gives it to you in a nutshell, and I am cognizant of the time and that I'm running out, so I'm dropping bits and pieces left, right and centre here, but I am available to answer questions at the end of this session if you are interested in skilled migration issues. But the two programs there and how they're impacted by that particular transition stream and how it can work to your advantage. And under the direct scheme, what is and is not required by the different visa subclasses. We were looking earlier at the age and English issues. For somebody who's been on the going through the temporary transition, and if they're over 50 and if they've been working for the employer in that occupation for 4 years on the 457, they've been paid over those previous 4 years the Fair Work Australia high income threshold, those people, this is an objective criteria placed on an age concession. So somebody who's over 50 could come through. This year, this high income threshold is $123,800. It's indexed. So if you were to sponsor somebody who's over 50 for the previous 3 years, plus this one, they must have been paid more than that indexed high income threshold. The English ones still stand. So people who hold passports from those countries don't have to undertake the IELTS tests. I mentioned earlier labour agreements. Labour agreements are for occupations that are not on our list. And if anybody is familiar with the Australian New Zealand Standard Classification of Occupations, we will go down to skill level 4, but once again, it's up for negotiation with our labour agreement section in Canberra. And it could be that you as an employer are seeking some kind of concession, either on the occupation that you're wishing to sponsor in, or perhaps even on English. We will talk about those things, but there's a bit of horse trading that goes on. You might be seeking a concession, the department may be looking for something else from you as an employer. Skill Select is a free service that we offer. It's a program that allows people from overseas to put their CVs and work history onto our website. And you as an employer, if you're looking for a particular skill set, can register. You get a thing called an AUSKey code. You can go in there and search it for somebody who is seeking to come to Australia and who has put themselves out in that market, and you would make direct contact with them to determine whether or not that person might be suitable for your company. Then you would come to the department to seek an avenue to sponsor them in. It's free of charge, as I mentioned. More information about the department there, and once again, it's all on that little thumb drive, and our contacts. And I thank you for your attention.